I began my work in Jewish education at a time of expansive and creative educational upheaval in the late 1960s. Within that climate of change came unique and unparalleled opportunities for young people like me. Linking the Jewish educational experience to the prophetic tradition of confrontation with the status quo and its explicit call for social justice in the form of nonviolence, peace, racial equality, protection of the poor and weaker members of society was not immediately acceptable. Jewish education was supposed to be about subjects and to stop at the synagogue door. What was all this social activism being advocated as central by these young Turks? Most felt, some said. As hard as it is to imagine today, at age 21, I was given carte blanche at the Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City to create a program that would engage, inspire, and build loyalty and commitment from its teenagers. The after-school high school that emerged and grew from 1967 to 1985 was dynamic, intellectually authentic, and serious, at the same time that it was political, social, and fun. But our involvement in civil rights, in anti-Vietnam demonstrations, in open and critical study and discussion about Israel and the Middle East, etc., raised eyebrows. There were doubters. But as the school swelled in numbers, including non-Jewish friends who began coming to Hebrew school, it became clear that we were on the right path. As one of my former students, New York Times journalist Amy Harmon wrote after receiving the 2008 Pulitzer Prize, quote, "The truth is that the biggest influence on the worldview that led me to receive this humbling honor of the Pulitzer Prize was the education I received during my years at the Park Avenue Synagogue High School." Can you imagine? You're taking my seconds. "I have always been drawn," she says, "to writing about ethical issues. And it was at PAS that I learned about ethics because Peter made ethical issues come alive in every subject we covered. It was on the 2 summer trips that I took with him that all of his lessons were deeply imprinted. In Israel and then in the Soviet Union, this was 1984 and 85, I developed," she says, "a critical outlook, a sense of compassion, and a comprehension of the complexity of personal, political, and cultural relationships that has shaped my interests and my outlook ever since. Perhaps most importantly," she continues, "those trips infused me with a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. The excitement and the joy of discovery was celebrated in a way that was never true elsewhere in the various educational forums in which I participated. It blended the intellectual and the spiritual, and it gave me a self-confidence in my own pursuit of meaning that I don't believe I would have had otherwise," unquote. During those very years when Amy was my student, I was given the chance, the encouraging climate to imagine a different kind of Jewish day school. Could we take the values of the Park Avenue Synagogue High School and transpose them onto the then current model of a Jewish day school? Could we limit the inherent insularity of a childhood and adolescence of Jewish exclusivity by teaching universal values and humanist concerns within the context of a rich, bold, and imaginative approach to Jewish and general studies? Could we actually integrate curriculum and break the self-limiting design of half-day Jewish studies and half-day general studies that still permeates most of the day school world? Could we avoid the atmosphere of religious and material competitiveness and build a network of families who care for each other, celebrate their differences, and work together for the betterment of the whole world, and emerge with people who value difference and appreciate the inherent divine nature of cultural and even religious pluralism? Today, the Abraham Joshua Heschel School stands as a beacon and a permanent commitment to these ideas and values. Heschel graduates on college and graduate school campuses today stand out as a powerful voice for engagement with and respect for the other, as representatives of moral and ethical values, as agents of change. And then in the late 1990s came a clear new direction, KIVUNIM. Those words of Heschel's that I quoted in the film, given to me on the march behind Dr. King's coffin in Atlanta, Georgia in 1968, "You must teach the children, teach them a Judaism that can remake the world," led me to travel into the Jewish past in order to anticipate the Jewish future. Heschel said that when we enter the land of Israel, we re-enter the biblical drama. And of course, the same is true wherever the Jewish people set down its roots. I have had the privilege of re-entering our people's historical drama. Along that journey, I have developed relationships of mutuality with Jews and non-Jews alike that have become true friendships and have deeply enriched my life. I have traveled over major portions of our globe, from Morocco to India. KIVUNIM seeks to reconnect the Jewish people to its historical past, to the thousands of years that saw us deeply integrated with the cultures that surrounded us, to the dozens of countries and hundreds of cities in which we lived, where people living beside us had religious beliefs that were different than our own, sometimes even at odds with ours, but where we possessed a remarkable ability to positively assimilate into ourselves aspects of the world that surrounded us, while knowing intuitively what would cross the line and cause us to lose our connection to ourselves. This is the real magnificent story of the Jewish people. We are the world, only we no longer know our own story. KIVUNIM's impact has already gone beyond our Jewish world and is international in scope, demonstrated most powerfully in the creation of the first, but certainly not the last, Israel Seminar for Muslim Arab students, which I had the honor, the unique privilege to design and lead last June 2012. When these students returned to their homes across Morocco, they all wrote to me of the power of the experience we had shared together. Mehdi Obalhu wrote, quote, "Actually, during this trip, I was inspired by your wonderful thoughts and the way you look at the world from different angles. You actually made me change my way of thinking and my way of looking at the outside world." Leila El-Maslouhi said, and I quote, "I talked to my family about my journey, and they were completely impressed and very proud of whom I had become. Every time I remember an incident, an event, or a place, I go to them and tell them about my feelings and all the beautiful places and people I encountered in Israel. I talk to my close friends too, to my surprise, and maybe to yours as well, discussed with them the idea of coexistence, peace, and the shared history of humanity in that particular part of the earth, the Holy Land. All my friends became enthusiastic about spreading the idea of peace and coexistence among human beings in general and between Jewish and non-Jewish people in the world, and especially the Moroccan Jew with the Moroccan non-Jew. Her fundamentalist parents now want to visit Israel themselves. Make no mistake about it, these are revolutionary words. They have begun to chip away at the wall of separation between Arab and Jew, and they have been made possible because of a program in Jewish education that took a different path. Imagine the possibilities. From my 20s, I have sought first subconsciously, and then consciously, and with deep and focused intention, to bring to the educational community, Jew and non-Jew alike, the unique teachings of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. It was Heschel who taught me, quote, that the significance of Judaism does not lie in its being conducive to the survival of this particular people, but in its being a source of spiritual wealth, a source of meaning relevant to all peoples. In that light, he taught, quote, that a central concern in Jewish thinking is to overcome the tendency to see the world in one dimension, from one perspective, and that the task is to humanize the sacred and to sanctify the secular. In his words, finally, over and above personal problems, there is an objective challenge to overcome inequity, injustice, helplessness, suffering, carelessness, oppression. Over and above the din of desires, there is a calling, a demanding, a waiting, an expectation. There is a question that follows me wherever I turn. What is expected of me? What is demanded of me? We call our national ideology Zionism. My work today in KIVUNIM is an attempt to redirect that ideology from its inwardness to a new outer directedness, actively seeking improvement of the world's tolerance, mutual respect, commitment to human rights and human dignity in a just and peaceful world. To accomplish this, I believe we must reestablish the lost link to the history of the Jewish people throughout the world amongst our young people by sharing with them the noble and creative story of Jewish life around the world. I think that Jewish education for this new century must help to minimize our fears and maximize our comfort with people, cultures, and religions that are different than our own, both as Americans and as Jews. Sadly, I think today we often educate to exactly the opposite. Imagine if we were educating our Jewish children in all of our multiple settings, across all of the lines that divide us, to be able to hear that call. What is expected of me? What is demanded of me? To realize that for each of them, and certainly each of us as well, there is a universal spiritual humanist calling, a purpose to serve each human being across the face of the earth with all of their different hues of color, of spirit, of belief, to internalize a foundational appreciation of the divine nature of all of God's creation, not just some of it. If that were the purpose of Jewish education, if from the depths of our tradition we helped bring the promise of the 21st century to fruition through the education we provided to our own children, now wouldn't that be quite a legacy? Teach them a Judaism that can remake the world. Of course, I cannot claim to have done what Heschel told me to do, but I have tried. And your recognition today of my life's work is a powerful affirmation for me of the rightness of that path. Much needs to be done to fulfill that charge, but the significance and nobility of the effort is recognized tonight by your award to me and through me to KIVUNIM and to the Abraham Joshua Heschel School in New York City and to the Park Avenue Synagogue High School where I began. Thank you for this great and deeply appreciated honor.